Welcome to the LDA Podcast, a series dedicated to improving the lives and education of all learners. This week, we sat down with Dr. Anneke Schreuder, the founder of Math and Dyscalculia Services, to learn more about dyscalculia, the importance of early detection, and more.
Hello everyone, I'm here with Anneke Schreuder. She's the founder of Dyscalculia Services. This is an organization she founded in 2010 to raise awareness of dyscalculia and assist parents to support their child's learning. She is a Dutch medical doctor, pediatrician, and neonatologist, and earned her doctorate in the field of developmental epidemiology. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Schreuder.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I also appreciate the LDA giving me the opportunity to speak about the children who really need help, and those who have dyscalculia do not always get that help yet.
So, I think we hear so much about dyslexia and not enough or rarely anything about dyscalculia.
Yeah.
Why is that, and what should we know?
Well, that's definitely a thing, and dyslexia is already around for I think 35-40 years. Everybody knows about it. Everybody picks up on the symptoms. If there is a child in a classroom that really struggles with learning the alphabet, learning the letters, learning the sound combinations, and doesn't have proper phonological awareness, or later on when he is learned to do the decoding, is struggling with comprehension, then all the people start thinking, hey, this might be dyslexia, let's get this child tested and maybe we can help him. And there's a lot of dyslexia tutors around that do a fabulous job. It's a really research-based intervention. There are many schools, and I personally come from Houston. We have the Nijhuis Institute and we have UT Texas, where teachers are being educated, so we can reach out to those students and help them get proficient in reading, writing, and spelling. Mm-hmm. Now, what you bring up is really a point that resonates with me very deeply, because when I came here, I also worked as a dyslexia tutor, and I decided that it was more important to start learning about dyscalculia. And for 2 years I didn't work. I was only in the library and online and reading a lot of research. I really love research. You already mentioned my background. Mm-hmm. And I came to the conclusion that there are many students here that do not get the help with dyscalculia. It's so unknown yet that I actually did a talk once about the forgotten learning disability. Mm-hmm. That was the dyscalculia. So if nobody thinks about the necessity of testing or screening, then without the diagnosis there is no hope for those students to get help. And previously, there were not that many intervention strategies available. There is still not one big research-based intervention that everybody can use, but we have really made progress in that area. So it starts to be really useful to now test those children, because there are options. We start to understand what we can do for them, how we can help them, which methods and materials are really useful, and what approaches we can give them.
So what are some of the approaches that you can give students?
Well, one of the approaches, let me start. You mentioned the comparison between dyslexia and dyscalculia. Mm-hmm. Now, many states have a mandatory screening for dyslexia, kindergarten and first grade. And that is fabulous. That is really a big progress made by the dyslexia lobby, so to say. Mm-hmm. Now, we also need to have the same for dyscalculia. You can pick it up at the same age as dyslexia. The markers are already there actually a lot earlier. we can see those little babies at the age of 6 months who react more or less to a quantity, to numerosity, that those who do not really react so much to different quantities, and those are small quantities, obviously, 2 dolls, 3 dolls, do they see the difference? You can already discriminate between the kids who will have problems in math later on and those who will sail through the programs.
Are you doing that through fMRI, or is that just a visual kind of screening?
This is a behavior screening, where you put the 6-month-old baby in front of a screen, and babies at that age get bored very quickly. So what you need to do is you can use that novelty, then they start looking at it as a research tool. So you show them several times, say a dot pattern with a certain number of dots, and they get bored, they don't look at it anymore. And then on one side you show a card with a few dots, and at the other side a card with a different number of dots. That's the novelty. And you immediately see, because the researcher is behind the screen and peeps through a little hole, sees the baby looking at that other screen, because there are more or less dots than he was used to. So that's interesting. At that moment we know that he did see the difference. Also, there is a very interesting test that is done by little puppets, and we have a screen in front of the puppets, and we kind of fool the kids and secretly take away a puppet. Or we put a hand in there and we do as if we add an extra puppet, then the screen goes up, we remove the puppet again, and the screen goes on, and he sees 2 puppets. Well, he was expecting 3. And those kids that really look with big eyes like, what's going on here? That's not what I expected. Then you see that they see the difference between 2 and 3 little puppets. So that's already at the age of 6, and that tells us, and I think it's very important for both parents and teachers to hear this, that this is an innate biological issue. You can see it on an MRI machine, and the best on functional MRI, like you mentioned. So it's not a thing that comes on later because the parents didn't play enough math games at home, or the teacher didn't give them the proper textbooks in school. It was already there before they entered school.
So it's neurologically based.
It's neurologically based, yes, absolutely.
So is there, I know we know a lot about dyslexia in the neurological basis, are the brain waves similar in individuals with dyscalculia, or is it, do different parts of the brain light up or not light up?
Different parts of the brain light up. One very important area is the interparietal sulcus on both sides of the brain. It's above your ears, so to say. Then obviously the language centers, where you store your counting words, and the visual centers, where you learn to read the numbers, the Arabic numerals, and also where you see a multiplication sign, an addition sign, and also the place where we write numbers. So these 3 centers are the specific centers: the number sense center here at the interparietal sulcus, then the language center for the counting words, and the visual center to look at the math question that you are working on. These centers all need to work, and they need to work together. Now, unfortunately, that is not the whole story, because many more areas in the brain actually help to do math. Attention span is very important. Memory comes to mind. Processing, not only processing speed, but temporal processing. What comes after the other? Seeing the order of things. So these are brain-based issues.
So we know that different areas of the brain light up or don't light up.
I completely forgot.
And then We also know from some neuroscience that the brain has some plasticity.
Yes.
So how do we kind of give our students strategies in order to help them?
Yeah, you mentioned brain waves. Sorry, I didn't mention anything of the sort. What we in this field mostly use are the functional MRIs, where you see what area of the brain takes up the biggest blood flow and by that gets the most oxygen and the most glucose, the most feed for your brain cells. And if both children and adults who are in this functional MRI machine doing some math problems, you can see what areas of the brain they mainly use. And yes, plasticity is a very interesting phenomenon. When I was in medical school way back when, we learned that you're born with a certain number of neurons and connections, and that's what you had to live with. Now, luckily, that has been overturned, and we know now that the brain, the younger you are, the more, but also for adults, you can change your brain. There is a big possibility for learning that comes later. If it's not inborn, then you can, with a lot of time and effort investment, but you can learn more strategies. You can even learn, one of the hallmarks of dyscalculia is not being able to subitize numbers. So we sit here at the table, imagine we have 3 or 4 people around the table, we immediately know there's 4 people. We're not counting them one by one. That's called subitizing. That's one of the skills, abilities that students with dyscalculia are not so good at. I'm not saying they can do it, but they can do it for smaller numbers. It takes a little bit longer, and often they make a little bit more mistakes. So it's a gradual difference. Also, they lack in approximate number sense. That's another of the number sense abilities here in your interperative sulcus. If we compare 2 groups of quantities, say 2 plates of Oreo cookies, some kids immediately know which plate to choose because they are the most Oreo cookies. But kids with dyscalculia do this a little bit slower. It's harder for them, or they sometimes pick the wrong plate. So these 2 things, you can also see that in an MRI machine. These 2 activities are less well developed, but by training, like you mentioned, the plasticity, you can train both these abilities, and that is obviously what we want to do as quickly as possible when we see that some of those basic neurological problems are still deficient, to help those kids as quickly as possible when the plasticity is really super at a young age to get that in place.
So it seems like a lot of the number sense skills that you just talked about are very are skills that students learn at an early age, and then they build off of them as the curriculum becomes harder and harder in math. Yeah. So it seems critical that that students receive interventions or receive supports and strategies at particular time periods. When is the best time, and when how do we diagnose and start the process early?
Well, you actually hit the nail on the head there. Math is a very sequential topic. One concept builds on the other. So if you lack in your basic skills, then the rest becomes a real big jumble. So the earlier the better. And we do screenings, and there are several screenings available. One is free, one is not very costly, but you need to pay for it. And you screen children in kindergarten and first grade. You already can weed out those kids who are in the lowest 10 percentile that you can predict that they are at risk for developing issues in math. It's a little bit difficult to, at that age, diagnose by behavior studies only if they have dyscalculia or not, but you definitely find those who are at risk, and I feel you need to catch them as early as possible, nip the problem in the bud, because we cannot afford to let it slip. If you let it slip longer, those kids are further behind and they lose their self-confidence. They start not to like math. Those kids actually need more practice in math, but because now they start to think they can't do it, they don't want to do it anymore. So instead of more practice, what they actually need, they wiggle themselves out of the practice, and then they fall behind further and further. It's a real downward spiral. And if you then pick them up, say in third grade, you have a much longer intervention time to get them back on the rails than when you start to help them early on. And third, fourth grade is usually the time that those kids who have used strategies to work themselves around the real math concepts start to crumble. Then they cannot hang in there anymore just based on rote memory. And the third grade, beginning fourth grade, you really need to understand what you're doing. All the fractions come in play. I'm not even saying the decimals and the percent that come a year later. Those things cannot be grasped by those students who have not had the help of the basis in first, second, and third grade.
So you say we can screen this at the kindergarten level. What are the screeners that would be used, and are you seeing districts use these?
I do not see districts use these. One that is very simple is the numeracy screener that's developed in the lab in Canada by Daniel Ansari and several of his students. It takes only 2 minutes to do.
So it could be part of the whole kindergarten screening process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Then you have the early numeracy indicators from the University of Minnesota that it takes a little bit longer. That's 5 minutes per child. And it is very well laid out. You get all the materials from their website, so well done. And you can train parent volunteers to do it, because you need to do it meticulously, exactly according to the guidelines, and you need to time it exactly, otherwise obviously you don't get the right data. And then you have the 10 tests of early numeracy. They all go from kindergarten to second grade. 10 is at the Ames web, that's a thing you need to pay. And all of these, I feel, are really helpful. So I have some private schools that I work with that have more leeway, more freedom to choose what they do, instead of a complete school district, which is obviously more organized top-down, and then before the whole decision process is finalized and something comes into action, that takes more time. Well, the lines are shorter in smaller private schools, so there are several private schools that I work that are enthusiastic and use these screening tools.
So you note that we're using a dyslexic screener, and that's pretty much lobbyists kind of mandated that. Is there legislation that this dyscalculia screener would be used nationally at some point, or is that still in its infancy? And
I'm afraid the rules to screen for dyscalculia are still in their infancy. If I remember correctly, West Virginia is currently talking about adding dyscalculia into the legislation that's already there for dyslexia. So well done, West Virginia. And I hope more states will follow. Obviously, it's mentioned in the DSM-5. Mm-hmm. So we have both the 504 plans and we have the IDEA where the diagnosis of learning disabilities has been described, And luckily, there are now 2 mentions that are about math. There are 5 about language, but 2 about math that specifically mention math calculations and math problem solving. Some can be diagnosed with a deficiency of one or the other, but I also see students that are diagnosed with both of them together. Now, what is an important difference in the IDA of 2004, that for the diagnosis of a learning disability, the states do not need to use the severe discrepancy method anymore. So previously, when a student was lucky enough to have a good mental development and was able to find strategies around the issues in math, then that student would be eligible for help. But other students who might have the same problems in math, but might have been a little bit less lucky in the score of their mental development, could not have that significant discrepancy between their overall mental development and their functioning in a specific area of education, and they were not eligible for help. Well, those kids also lack the flexibility to use strategies and to compensate for it.
And back then, it was a wait to fail model. You just have to keep going up in grades until the discrepancy was large enough to
exactly. And
then qualify.
Unfortunately, yeah, you say that it was, but I wished it was, because I still see it happening around Texas. There are still a lot of methods in school districts that say we need to wait till the student is failing, and by then we might do something.
And by then, they can't even access the curriculum for math anymore because the basic number sense has then been moved on from, and they're asking higher level skills in math.
Absolutely. And then it's really, really hard to help those students. So there are some students, which obviously is a difficult thing in a school district, but some charter schools or private schools are more open to a flexible solution. Say, well, temporarily we need to do another curriculum, either a one-on-one tutoring or an online program or a combination, till this student is at a level that he can benefit again from the regular classroom instruction. Because now they are actually completely losing their time because it goes over their head and it only sparks anxiety.
Yeah. And if they can't access the curriculum in Gen Ed, why be in Gen Ed where you could get the remedial instruction in order to once it's developed, then actually access the curriculum?
Yes.
So what are some resources for those individuals that want more information about this topic?
Well, we have Dyscalculia headlines where we post on a daily basis everything that's in the news, and also some research. We do a weekly podcast about that. And on my website, I have a lot of information. I also have free resources that I keep building on. We do a weekly podcast. We have a series of 5 podcasts right now that take between 3/4 and an hour. And that gives you an overview. We have a course, it's called Dyscalculia Awareness, which is geared up to teachers, counselors, and heads of schools. And you need to fill in a few questions afterwards if you want to get a certificate of participation for the continuing education hours. And then our really big project is, after 10 years, I'm now sharing what I have learned. I've picked up a lot of things in standardized programs. One of the programs that I definitely like to mention is the Dyscalculia Solution by Jane Emerson and Patricia Bapti in London, in Emerson House. They do a fantastic job. And they have written a guideline that also comes with an overview to weed out the specific gaps that a student has. But there are many other resources that I've pulled together. I'm really lucky coming from a very small country where there's a lot of emphasis on learning languages, because nobody will ever learn Dutch because we are so small. We're a stamp on the earth. So if you want to do some trading and so on, then you need to learn other languages. So I also read French and German. And in Canada and in Germany, also in Austria, I have Karen Kusian. I can mention a lot of names that I can draw information from. There's a lot of very good instructional material coming from New Zealand, and I try to put that together and make an individual program for each student based on the needs they have. And after doing that for 10 years, I have made a lot of videos to share that with teachers who want to become an independent dyscalculia tutor themselves. I can guarantee them there's plenty of work.
Yeah, again, like you hear so much about dyslexia and very little about dyscalculia, and we know that our students struggle in math, and the struggles in math lead to math anxiety, lead to shutting down, all of which you touched on here.
And actually, there was a really large research in the UK in 2008, where they figured out not only missing out in education, but later on missing out in job opportunities. So they compared average incomes for people who had dyslexia, and they were kind of missing out £84,000 overall in their career. But the students and the people that they followed up later on who had dyscalculia, they missed out £114,000. So it's even a bigger influence. Now, it might be that dyslexia is so much more known. There are so many more apps that read out websites for you, help with books and so on, that people with dyslexia are already better able to cope with their issues. Also, neurodiversity organizations and who try to help people get a good job are all knowledgeable about dyslexia. There's a lot of employers who already know what to do. You have the spell checker and you have Grammarly and all types of things. There's more acceptance for if somebody that you know, one of your colleagues, has dyslexia, makes a strange spelling or error in a meeting report, then there is a lot of acceptance for that. But for dyscalculia and for some other learning disabilities also, because it's so unknown, people are afraid to hire people who have dyscalculia. And also, if you mess up the finance, your own finance, or the finance of your department, well, that's kind of the end of your career. Mm-hmm. So career-wise, it's not only education, but career-wise, these people are really at a disadvantage, and I feel we need to help them. Also for the economy in general, we cannot. Those are people who have skills, who are valuable for our society. We cannot leave them out.
And unless we start screening and unless we start providing early intervention services, we're basically setting up a pathway to leave them out. So I love what you're doing and all of the resources you provided, because you're giving teachers, parents, school administrators the resources in order to start making a difference. And thank you for that.
Well,
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for
so much
for sharing this conversation, Dr. Schreuder. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the LDA podcast. This series is made possible by the Learning Disabilities Foundation of America. Our theme music is Little Idea by Scott Holmes. For more resources from LDA, visit ldaamerica.org.